And we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to AJC and the Web Devs at Night, episode 3 or 4. I've lost count at this point, but I guess it depends whether you count the one with Frizzell. But Dev, my man, you have a new project. What's up?
I do. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's been more than 4 at this point. We've just had a lot of like hiatuses in between.
Yeah, I think this is probably the 4th with just you and I, and it'll be 5 with Frizzell. I think is how many it is. But yeah.
Nice.
So Spectre. When you first created this project and I heard the name, it took me like a second to realize it has to do because of spec, and then I felt really stupid.
Right.
It took me like an hour of like hearing it over and over, and like, wait, it's like, okay, Spectre, spec. So I was gonna ask like, what's the name mean? And I was like, oh wait, duh.
Right. Yeah,
But
I
to
was.
me, it made me think of the James Bond franchise. I don't know if you've seen much James
Nice.
Bond films, but Spectre is the international espionage network that is like the bad guy in a lot of the films. It stands for a special executive for counterintelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion. Because the R and the E are flipped. So that's also what I thought of when I heard Spectre. That's another acronym.
Okay, got it. And my exposure to the word Spectre mostly comes from like playing RPG games where it's like some sort of a ghost or and I think there's also a Spectre character in DC, which is like a god level character.
Yes, Spectre as a spirit. Yeah, it's definitely another common case. It's a versatile word.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can concoct like a more. I should probably ask Codex to concoct like a more mythological story behind Spectre, the framework.
This is like when Tom, he wrote this whole backstory about the name Redwood. And if you actually go back in the Git history, he had written almost the exact same thing for the first name of it, which was Hammer. And then he just kind of took the vision and slightly reworded it because they had to change the name. And it sounded like, you know, it fit so perfectly in both cases. But it was basically the same justification.
Nice. Yeah, but Spectre, I feel it is like almost something I've been working on since like November, and it's inspired by something that my previous boss at Zolvio, he has been working on like technically since like our late 2024, but like I mean I think I'm freezing up. Are you? Did you lose me at any point?
No, okay. You're coming in just fine.
And Maddie's coming through fine?
Yeah, no, you sound totally good. You may be getting lag on your end. This happened in the last episode also, but we can hear you just fine. So
okay.
Carry on.
Yeah. I can't wait to get off of this like terrible Wi-Fi. Yeah, but like so Spectre was inspired by something that I mean a lot of other people have kind of been worked on for a while, trying to turn like diagrams into code. Some are like at least some sort of scaffolding. And it's essentially a way to like describe the kind of behavior you want out of applications at a higher level, which was popular in some circles before spec-driven development kind of blew up thanks to AWS Kiro.
Thanks to AWS what?
AWS Kiro, the IDE that they launched with that writes like massive markdown documents.
Okay.
Kiro, okay.
Yeah, or Kiro. I don't know how it's actually pronounced. You may be right.
Or like GitHub Spec Kit. There's a bunch of these.
Because this is what it is superseding Q, Amazon Q, I think is what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You are freezing a little bit now, actually, but you're still good. Your video is just freezing a little bit. But I think.
Give me just 1 second. Let me reconnect.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'm gonna grab some links. They're already in the YouTube show notes. I'll share them on screen while you're doing that. So we've got a GitHub repo, and we've got a video that's already out of date. So
Right.
don't need to worry about that one too much, but I'll share the GitHub link for people. Hey, we got someone in the chat. Sorry, I wasn't seeing those. What's up, my man? Thank you for joining. Also, actually, before we get started, someone had a question, Dev, in the comments from last week. I think it's actually a person asking a real question. So it was for you. Let me pull that up real quick. They were asking about what your thoughts were on some project called Daima, D-A-I-M-A. Do you know what that is?
D-I-A-M-A?
D-A-I-M-A.
I do not know about this project. All that's coming up on Google searches.
I see one thing that says a lightweight code editor, and another thing that says a database proxy written in Java. Yeah, we got the comment said, inquiring minds want to know, how does Dev feel about Daima, D-A-I-M-A?
I'll look into it after the stream.
Cool. It may be just nonsense or a bot or something, but it's hard to tell. Someone else though comments and said, thank you for sharing your experiences. This video deserves more likes and comments. So I hope that's also a real person. We don't usually get many comments on the videos. Ryan comments sometimes, the dash dude I know. But, yeah. Okay, so is your connection all good now?
Yeah, I think so.
Sweet. So here's the link. Yes. Dev Agrawal 09//Spectre with an ER, not an RE. The extortion comes before the revenge. This acronym.
Right. Yeah, I think a Spectre with an RE is probably like there's probably more domains and packages available. But yes, I think the TER is probably going to be more natural for an American audience.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So how do we get started? Do we just jump into a demo, or do we talk
let's look at the README first.
Okay.
It's good. That's usually a good entry point, and if it's not a good entry point right now, that would be a good thing to think about at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's probably some things in the README that we
need to generate.
I'll share my screen.
A fat image that slaps for the home README.
Right. Yeah. No, I want some really good images and logos for this. I think that's one benefit of using the name Spectre.
Okay. Can you bump your font up a couple times?
Yes. Can I? At what point does it take over? Okay, the width. So yeah, this is the part that's one of the obsolete things that's I need to get rid of. It's just a TypeScript framework now.
Just TypeScript. So just so is there a UI at all, or it's just all scripts?
So there is a UI. Obviously the apps that you're going to build will have a UI, but I've kind of like cut the UI specification and UI behavior out of the scope, because at some point I realized that I think we are going to get into it, but basically now it's more of a I guess it's closer to XState, honestly. Like it's a way to describe stateful logic, or that you can put pretty much like anywhere.
So it's kind normally of like a headless thing. It's logic, so you could stick a UI on it, I'm sure. But at this point, that's not really the focus. You're just focusing on the functionality.
Exactly, yeah. And you can build a backend with it, and there's also like a way to create a like type-safe client for it, so that you can have a server-side app written in Spectre, and then you can have a type-safe client that your UI uses to like talk to your backend, kind of like TRPC-esque. But it can also like generate REST APIs. Yeah.
for this README, before you get into the repository and how it's organized and
Right.
stuff, you should have just the command you would run to use this thing, to like install it and
Yes.
actually use it,
Mhm.
because that's more, yeah. So right there, the creator project,
Yeah.
you should just flip
Mhm.
those two sections. So you already
Yes.
got it. That would be my one, just kind of a structural recommendation right there.
Yeah, this is like AI generated readmes. They don't really have a great understanding of how to write readmes. It's just like they just dump whatever information is there.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that we do in my workshops, is that we create like a structured README template that you can use to generate, so that always gets like all the sections you want in the right order. So that's a useful prompt that I could share with you.
Cool. Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks. So yeah, I mean, the way to get started with Spectre is pretty straightforward. This will create. Right now, this is going to create like a Hano and Solid.js app, a single page app. I'm probably going to move this to like something like TanStack Start right now. Now that like Solid is not really a core thing, and you can use it with pretty much any framework that you want. The starter template just happens to be using Hano right now.
I got an error. It said cannot find package effect / platform imported from thing.
Yeah, there's things that I need to fix there.
It works with Bun. Sweet.
Yeah, I'm using Node for everything, but yeah, it should, which means it should probably work with Bun. Yeah, there's honestly not.
Yeah, it worked with Bun, but not with Node. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so super early, lots of fixes needed, and I don't think the README actually has much useful information here. README kind of just describes what the what this repo is, and not what Spectre is, and I need to fix that.
Yeah, if I were you, I would just rewrite the README to use Bun and have the CLI do Bun install and Bun dev, because Bun's like super tight. I don't know if you know
yeah, I honestly I stopped using Bun a few weeks ago, I think. Yeah, I just don't want to contribute to anything Anthropic is doing. I mean, I like Bun as a thing, but like I just don't like Anthropic.
Fair enough. I'm just gonna try. So I got the project created, and I'm trying to run it right now. Sweet. I got it to do app.
Yeah, so this is the app that you should see. It's like a pretty like not super interesting to do app, where you can add things, remove things, mark them as checked. So I am very creative with demos, as you can see. And the only thing that's additional here is that if I check all 5 of them, I should see something here. Yeah. So, and like when you have 5 or 10 or 15 to-dos completed, it shows a little cheer. That's the only thing that's like additional here from like the to-do app that you might be familiar with. But yeah, it's the demo itself is just a to-do app, and it's a simple to-do app so that we can focus on the more interesting part, which is how it's actually built. Okay, so I guess we can jump into like how it works, unless you have other questions about this, or
no, go for it.
I don't know where it came from. So yeah, the basic idea of Spectre is that everything is an event. So this is Spectre. It creates event-sourced apps, which means events are kind of the source of truth, and events are what we store in our main database. The event log is how we get like our consistency throughout the application, and it also means that we never lose any data. The event log itself is like append only. You just add events to it, and everything else, like any other piece of state that you might need, is basically like a projection of those events which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, so everything in every kind of like interaction, every fact is recorded as an event. So to do was added with this ID and title. The completion of a to do was changed, and this is to do ID. This is the value that was changed to. To do was removed. We created a cheer, the thing that the banner that we saw at the top, and it shows like how many to dos did we complete for this like cheer milestone to be created, and what was the message shown. So that's literally it. Like these are the 4 events that
And
kind
is
of
the
make up this
Z
entire app.
Zod? Yeah, it's Zod.
Yes, that is Zod. But this accepts like a standard schema, so you can
And this
use
uses
pretty much whatever.
effect too, I would assume, because that's what crashed the first time I tried to download it.
Yeah, I still need to get rid of that. Like, it was using effect for a while, then I kind of ripped it out of the internals. I'm probably gonna add it back in because the typed error handling is still helpful. But yeah, I was trying to like experiment with some patterns with effect that didn't really go anywhere, so I ended up ripping it out. But yeah, so
Gotcha.
this was all. You can obviously like also use effect schema here because this just accepts like a standard schema thing.
Yeah, most of my stuff is actually using Valibot.
Oh, I need to reload the window so that I have DLSP working. Yeah, so when you create a new Spectre app, you start by thinking in terms of events. And other than the fact that these events are what gets stored in the data, it's also like a good way to kind of think about your app at a very high level. Because in like you're not thinking in terms of like entity relation diagrams or like flowcharts. I mean, all of those are kind of like higher level things, but events are like a good way to represent things that have happened in your app. So you can kind of like put together some sort of a user story or a workflow, like this happened and this happened. And this there's a technique that a lot of people use to kind of map out like complex domains before they build anything. It's called event storming, which is basically you get a bunch of people in the room that basically like a bunch of domain experts, and you hand them all like orange sticky notes, and you ask them to like write something down, stick it on a board to kind of like represent something that happens in their domain or in their business. And that's how you kind of map out everything that needs to happen. Then you eventually like consolidate them, and then you go into building event storming.
This is basically like Silicon Valley type stuff. I can imagine these types of companies do these types of activities a lot.
Yes.
It's a very techy kind of thing. They just love ways to put things in boxes in visual space. That's the way they
exactly. Yeah, pretty much. And it's a pretty helpful way to like get a high level understanding of like very complicated things, because it kind of like reduce everything down to events. And then what you can do here is like once you have those events kind of mapped out, you just like you literally like have a one-to-one like rewrite each event definition for each event that exists. And at some point I want to take like when the events are defined here, there's like once there's like a first class concept of event definitions, we can take this and like visualize it on a board, so like it automatically kind of becomes that. But this is like the main thing about Spectre, or not this is not the main thing, but this is like the kind of foundational thing that sets everything else up. So after events, we have slices. So the way that this code base is organized, like we have our database, we have our empty folder, which I can delete. We have our UI, we have our like, server-side code. We have this is our to-do app. But all the actual logic for our backend lives inside these features, and each of these folder is a slice. So this is where the vertical sliced aspect comes from. So we saw the events, here, and we can look at this add to do slice. So each slice can be one of three things. It can be a command, a query, and a reaction.
Okay.
A command, so commands and queries, you can think of it as like just API endpoints. Obviously, like you're a GraphQL person, you're familiar with like the
I was saying, like, I
and
was just
mutation.
thinking, just based on how they're named, like these look like API endpoints essentially.
Exactly, yeah. So each slice is an API endpoint, and so vertical slice architecture also has like a pretty long history. Not as long as like some other concepts, but it I think it kind of like people started talking about it, I think early 2010, like 2011, 12. There was this guy Jimmy Bogard who like goes to a lot of conferences to talk about this idea. And basically the idea of vertical slice architecture is that the application itself should be built off independent slices, instead of like putting things in layers. Like there's an API layer, your domain layer, and database layer. And instead of doing that sort of layering, you kind Jimmy Bogart vertical slice architecture. So you would write your code in vertical slices, and each slice is basically an API endpoint or something, some sort of interaction that the outside world can have with your system. And all the code that is needed for that slice to function lives in this one module, instead of being spread across like 3 or 4 different layers, or however many layers you might have. And the idea is that like this creates like kind of high cohesion and low coupling, which basically means that all the related code lives together, and these slices never depend on each other. So one thing you'll notice is that each slice depends on our like framework, our like database layer, which is like just our like database connection, basically database client, and our events. So slices can never depend on each other, which makes it possible to like build and test each slice independently. Now, the reason that vertical slice architecture was gaining popularity is because it's because like all the related code lives together. Like if you want to make a change to one feature, you have to just go to that one slice and make that change, instead of like going through like 4 or 5 different files or different layers that describe like different parts of it. But obviously with AI, we can probably like you can probably see how that's even more helpful with AI, because if all the code for a feature lives together, the AI only agents only have to look at that one slice and make changes to that one slice, instead of having to understand the entire code base and how things interact with each other. So yes, a slice cannot import another slice. That's a hard constraint almost.
Interesting. And there's not module
that would
code
defeat the whole
anywhere
purpose
that they're like importing from. They're just completely self-contained within each directory.
Yes, so the module code is like there's obviously going to be some
that's kind of what you're
code
importing from the library, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's how you're able to have these be still very compact, and you're not duplicating lots and lots of code across similar types of slices.
So the thing is, like with vertical slice architecture, it's actually encouraged that you duplicate code rather than try to over abstract. It's another one of those things where like instead of trying to instead of trying to abstract everything prematurely, the idea of vertical slice architecture is that you just duplicate the code as like whenever possible, and you only reach for like making shared modules when they're actually needed. So for like, I think the kind of like the golden rule is that if you see the same pattern repeat 3 times or more, that's when you take that and abstract, like make a shared module. But here, like you'll see the same kind of concept taken to a more extreme. Yeah. So okay. So let's talk about the command slice. The command slice is like it's like a mutation in GraphQL or like in TRPC, whatever. It's you give it some input, it does some validation, and it creates a new event. So again, we the source of truth is the events. We just add events. We never like update or delete events. So or the mutation in this case is like, or like changing the state of the system just means you add a new event to the system. Where would the shared module live? It can live anywhere, wherever you want in SRC. The only kind of the only thing that Spectre prescribes is that you keep all your feature code like split in these slices, and then like the rest you can organize however you want. There's no like built-in
Kind of like
opinions
how you
for
have
that.
the DB folder.
And my earphones
there.
died, so I'm not going to be able to hear anything for a bit. So you can you can keep going.
Yeah, I was just going off that because you were saying it could be you could organize just do the other stuff anywhere in SRE, and now saying you have like that DB folder. So that's the one example of something outside of the features folder, like there's some sort of shared logic happening in that DB that's being used. Dev, are you able to hear yet? Thanks for Sriharsh for joining, for asking questions. Appreciate it. All right, Jeff just dropped out. So vertical slice architecture. Look at this. So Jimmy Bogard wrote this in 2018. Many years back, we started on a new long-term project. And to start off with, we built the architecture around an onion architecture. Within a couple of months, the cracks started to show around this style. We moved away from that architecture towards CQRS. Before it had that name, along with moving to CQRS, we started building our architectures around vertical slices instead of layers. Whether flat or concentric, it's still layers. Since then, for the last 7 to 8 years or so, building around vertical slice architectures for all manners of applications and systems has been our exclusive approach. It has a link to an image that is broken, which is not useful.
It's an old website.
All right, you're back.
Okay, I think we're back. Yes, I am sorry about the technical issues. I am very looking forward to never having these again very soon. Okay, so I guess you were reading the vertical slice architecture article.
Yeah, I read like the first opening paragraph, just kind of like give us some context and to fill some space, and then he has a diagram where it says UI, application, domain, DB, and 4 vertical layers, and a slice goes through all of them. So that's a useful, very very simple kind of diagram.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, we can keep talking about vertical slice architecture, but I think this is also where the second most important part of Spectre comes in, which is the specifications. Or so these, where are these events stored? They're stored in some database.
You're using SQLite in this example.
Yes, I'm using SQLite in this example. Spectre itself doesn't actually ship like a Spectre ships like an interface for an event database that you can implement. So if we go to Spectre SQLite here, not that one, Spectre SQLite, yeah. So this is the event log that we're actually using. This is part of my application. This isn't a part of Spectre. Spectre just provides this event log adapter, and all you need to implement are these query, append, and transaction methods, and then you have your own way to store events. So it's pretty straightforward. You can use SQLite, you can use Postgres, you can use Event Store DB, you can use pretty much whatever you want to store the actual events, as long as they follow like a certain adapter pattern. Yeah, so okay. So we talked about slices, and command slices are responsible for like creating new events into the system or into your event log as a way of like updating the state. scenarios are how we specify how this command should behave. So we have like a scenario for creating a to-do with the provided title. So the when here is like the input that the command receives. So this command, like if you think of it as an API endpoint, you give it a title as a request body. So here we say that when you trigger this command with the title of ship it, we are expecting a to-do added event to be created with this title of ship it. So it's just like a like given when then, or like a simple behavior test of this is the input, this is the expected output.
So this is great because this is exactly what I teach in my workshop. Is we have given when then scenarios, and the exercise we walk them through is we have them just write out in text, like literally given when then as like a few shot example with a scenario, and then what to have for each of the things. So it would be something like resetting a password, like given a user includes their email and their correct password, then they can then this. And so you start with that, and then you can generate test scenarios off of that, and then we do like a TDD kind of, they call it red green refactor, but this looks like it actually kind of puts the test in the code itself.
Yes.
Or at least
it's
that
more
structure that are used in the test is actually the structure of the code itself, not a separate test. That's how we use the given when then, is we have that then test cases where each of those it's structured the exact same way as this, but it's then like that's a test code, it's not the actual code itself.
Yes, correct. So for example, if I go here and run cd apps reference, and if I run pnpm test, then it's basically going to it's basically going to go through all of these slices, look at all of these scenarios, and actually execute like a test at runtime that gives these inputs to the slice and checks if the output is as expected here.
So I was asking here, which is what I'm curious about. So do you have test files, and would they be just very minimal? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, so the test file looks like this. So you literally just need like 3 lines here to wire up everything into like this helper that you get from Spectre core testing. So you don't need to like add any more tests for your business logic. You literally just inline these scenarios in your definition. Now this is just like a JavaScript object, so when you at runtime, it's not going to do anything. But when you run pnpm test, it's going to look at all of these, and let's see, scenario. Yeah, so 27 tests. So these are all the tests that that we had defined all the slices. Let me see if it shows all the actual scenario. Okay, it doesn't. It's supposed to like show a list of all these descriptions, like these are the description scenarios that it ran. I'm going to debug why that didn't happen. But for example, let's say that, so I have one here that trims surrounding white space before creating a to-do. So I give it this extra, like ship it with extra space, and I'm expecting that the event that it created has that trimmed. Let's try to get rid of this. So if I remove .trim from here, and if I run pnpm test again, I should see the scenario failing. Yes, there we go. Yeah, this was the expected, but this is the title that it actually got. So these scenarios automatically turn into executable tests as soon as you have them defined. And plus they are type safe. So obviously that will not work because the schema here had title in it, not title with 2 T's. Yeah, so that's the idea of Spectre, is that you define or you specify the behavior right in here for each slice, and each slice will have its own behaviors. You don't need a separate test file. This is part of the definition itself, so it's like very, very difficult for AI like agents to get it wrong. And yeah, once you have these defined, you kind of have like a deterministic guarantee that whatever the implementation ends up being, it is going to follow this specification. So even like a non-technical person can come in, uh, kind of like look at these, like even if they don't fully understand this. Did I drop for a second
Just a
again?
second, yeah, no. So just to make this explicit,
Okay.
this is not the thing you're building here is not an AI tool at all. It's really just a framework, and the idea is that it's going to be very easy for an AI agent to use it because of how this framework is structured.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also going to be easy for like us and in a way to like review the AI code, because we can, most of the time you can come in here, you can look at these scenarios and nice, thanks. Yeah, so like here, if the implementation, like I don't even need to look at it. If I can look at these scenarios and I have a reasonable like if any edge cases that I can think of have been are like included in the specification, then I know that whatever the AI has implemented, it passes all the edge cases, and I don't necessarily need to look at the implementation. I might want to look at it if I want to see how the AI actually implemented it. Maybe it can do something in a simpler way. Maybe it's like not as performant, as efficient as it can be. So those are the things that you might want to check. But even a non-technical person can look at these scenarios and maybe even add more scenarios or change something, and then the AI can just take care of implementing, like updating the implementation until all the tests pass.
Right. So do you have a project you're using this for, or are you just currently kind of building the framework? Are you dog fooding it in any sense?
Yeah, I was trying to dog food it in a couple different projects. I think the main thing right now is like I don't have a lot of time outside of this, and like my job search to actually build things with it. But yeah, I'm almost certainly going to be dog fooding it in not just one, but multiple apps, I'm sure.
What would you
Even
tell
at some
someone to
point.
build with it, or suggest they could build with it?
That's a good question. You can build pretty much anything with this. It's like it's not built for a specific kind of use case. I think if there's anything that you want to build that you can map out in your head as like certain things happening in an order, or like it's like a state machine. Like eventually
Yeah,
everything
it does
is a
make
state
sense.
machine.
Thinking about like a state machine, because it's a sequence of
Mhm.
steps that you're plotting
Yeah.
out in as much of a deterministic
Mhm.
way as you can.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's look at another slice here, which is a remove to do slice. And what we're going to see here, again, this is another command. Like you send a command to remove a to do, you give it a to do ID. And here the scenarios have this given field, which is how we like give it some sort of precondition. Like if I have this to do already added and I try to delete that to do, I should see a to do removed event. If I don't have anything and I try to remove something, it should just reject it. Like there shouldn't be any result. Or if it has already been removed and I try to remove it again, it shouldn't do anything. So now in this slice actually maintains some state of or like it remembers what has happened in the past so that it can make its decision. And the add to do, like at least the way that we have implemented it here, it doesn't really care about state. You just add something and it gets added. You can imagine that this is, so you might want to keep track of like, okay, maybe a user can only add 100 to dos before they have to pay, or maybe you want some sort of a duplicate check. And in that cases, you would want to add additional scenarios that have some like given fields. I just don't have any right now, but you can see them in the remove to do slice. And then we have the query. So query is replacing what I had like as views or projections in my original video. There's basically like a get request where you give it some input, like I am querying for all or active or completed to dos. And then I have the ordering wrong here. But yeah, so you can see that if there is nothing and the status and I'm looking for all the to-dos, then I should get nothing. If I have created 2 of them, I should see 2 of them in the query response.
Do
And
all the events have to be
if I
read to build
have
the latest
2
state?
all the events have to be read to build the latest state, kind of. We're going to get into the implementation in a bit. So each slice you can kind of think of it as like it has like its metadata, which is the name, the description, the schema, the dependencies. Again, we'll get into this in a bit as well. And the second thing, each slice has its scenarios, which is how the behavior is specified. And the third thing is the implementation, which for each slice is split into like 2 functions. So every slice has an apply function and a handle function. This is basically how the slice is implemented at runtime. All the events have to be read, yes, and we'll get to that in a bit. So yeah, this is how a query works. So if I have a to-do added and I either completed it, then I added another one, and I'm looking for only the active to-dos, it should only return to-do 2. It shouldn't return 1 because we have already completed it. And the same thing here. So you can, again, specify how a query behaves by like giving it some events and some input, and then coming up with like what should be the output of this query. So you can imagine that most of your backend can be built in this way. And then the final thing is a reaction slice, which is like how you would automate workflows. Yeah. So what this reaction does is that whenever you have 5 completed to-dos, it's going to create a cheer. So we can see here that when there are only 4 completed to-dos, it's not going to do anything. But when there's 5 completed to-dos, it's going to create this to-do cheer. It's basically like a side effect that the reaction can cause. And there's another one to say that if you have, like, if you completed 5 to-dos, you uncheck a to-do and then you check it again, then you shouldn't see anything because you've already received the cheer for 5 to-dos. So you cannot like cheat the system.
This does the code just reminds me of XState in a lot of ways too. So you end up with lots of like arrays of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know David was very, very happy to see this.
Yeah. Cool. So is there like something specific if you were to have an agent be building something with this that you would point it at, like any docs or any context for what it needs to do, or you would just kind of point codex or whatever and let it rip? If you have an open code file.
Yeah, the open code file, that's like for some configuration that I'm using like to build this. But like really all you need is like this one skill.md that teaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the skill that gets cloned whenever, like when you ran npm create Spectre. This skill comes with the actual the reference app or the starter app, and this basically teaches the agent how to use it. I think that this is another thing that's
you actually scroll up to the top, so you can just see like the first couple of lines of what it's defining. It's saying Spectre project is a TypeScript app built with vertical features. Events are domain facts emitted by accepted commands or reactions. A slice is one command query or reaction unit with private event-driven slice state and a human readable description. Yeah, this is great. This itself is a good description for someone who just wants to get a high-level idea of what this is. Scenarios are executable examples for slices. Each scenario has a human readable description. SQLite is app infrastructure. Spectre core owns runtime contracts, not persistence tables or database setup. Yeah, so you're not really doing a backup or anything, or you're not being the backend. Really interesting, great work. I have to head to bed now, but thank you both. Yeah, thanks for watching.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Cool. No, this is sweet. Yeah, and having just like one kind of focused skill is like the perfect amount. Like,
Yeah.
You don't need to go beyond that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the way that I've seen agents work best is that the more your code base actually reflects the patterns that you want, the less additional documentation you need to provide it, because the
Yeah.
agents are going
Yeah, you and
to
I have
do
talked
their
about this on
research.
some previous streams. Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah. Um, so a lot of the like agent steering actually comes from just having this code in here that
Mhm.
the agent can use as reference when it's building the app that you want. Oh my god, my earphone died again.
And it's a type of architecture
I'm
that has some sort of like online documentation, so it can have some sort of context in terms of what this is, what would be some conventions kind of associated with it. So it probably has some just training data understanding of what a vertical slice is, right? I don't know if you can hear me right now or not.
okay. I think I'm back.
You're back. So I was asking
Yes, I am.
if you think,
Go
yeah, I
ahead.
was just asking if you think the vertical slices is something that also, because it's not, well, super duper well known, but it's not super obscure either. It would be in the training data,
Mhm.
and the models and just AIs have some sense of what it would mean to do vertical slices correctly already.
Yeah, they have an idea of what vertical slices are, but
Mhm.
because the training examples just don't training examples are like most of the data set is just like tangled code bases. They just cannot do vertical slices themselves. um
Interesting.
like they will eventually end up importing things from slices into other slices or creating like a bunch of abstraction. um
Mhm.
so again, like the amount of steering that you would need to give like a regular developer that doesn't understand these patterns very well, that's the same amount of steering that you need to do for agents. um
Uh-huh.
the one difference is that you can add more deterministic things. So for example, I have a script here that literally checks like if a slice. Can I die
You
again?
cut out. I'm assuming you're gonna say it checks to see if a slice is breaking the conventions, like importing something or
Oh
doing
god.
whatever when it shouldn't be doing it. Kind of like a linter, essentially. We're having some storming happening where I am
I
too.
should have
I
just
think
used
my
my laptop for stream.
solid. Oh,
No,
hello,
this is
you're back.
definitely mine.
Operator,
Yes.
operator. Yeah, no, your internet's been
Yeah,
crappy today.
yeah, it's been crappy for a few days. Like, imagine interviewing for jobs with this internet.
Yeah, no, that sucks. Your screen is still coming in clearly though.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I have like a script here that literally checks if a slice is importing another slice. So things like these are helpful for the agent.
Yeah.
I don't even know how this works. It's been entirely wipe coded, but it works.
Yeah.
Uh,
Word.
cool. I guess one final thing we could look at is like the actual to do app.
Yeah,
And
sure.
we can so here like
So
we
is
have our
this the part
Spectre
that's written with
client.
solid?
Yes, and this is using Solid 2, Solid 2.0
Solid
beta.
DOS and not solid start, just solid client, I'm assuming.
Yes. It's one of the reasons why I decided to get rid of the UI aspect of Spectre. Like the first thing is that the solid testing library, we don't have a version 2 of it yet.
Oh,
So
word.
I literally couldn't write tests for Solid 2.0.
That's funny.
And then the second thing was that at some point I realized that the more of your logic moves into these slices, the more your UI components just become like declarative. Like the less logic you have in your components, the less the less you need to test them.
Yeah.
Because if it's
Because
just
if
declarative,
everything's
like
happening
render
in
this,
one path, then as long
yeah,
as that's working correctly, then it just has to get to the very end in the UI and then let all that logic happen, not within the
mhm,
components.
exactly. Yeah. So for example, if here, yeah, I have like a for each to do, I'm going to create this input. I'm going to show this to-do title here. And if I then have a test somewhere that says that if I render this to-do component with these 5 to-dos, I should see these 5 DOM elements. It's kind of like a pointless test because you're just testing if this for loop works, like if this JSX is as you expected. And you can just visually verify that. You don't need an executable test for that. What you might need tests for are your logic, your stateful logic. And if you can move that state, if you have stateful logic that you want tests for, you might as well just write that in Spectre.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but so here what we see is that we have the Spectre client. So it's kind of it's kind of like a TRPC style API where we import this type from our server definition, and then we create a client for it that goes to /API. And then here we can just say that .todo cheers, this is our query, .todo is query, and then we have our .add to do, this is our command. So you can call your commands and queries directly using the Spectre client in your UI. So even if I change this from Solid to React, nothing about Spectre will need to change.
Right, yeah.
Cool. So I think we have covered events, slices and scenarios, the client here, and what we haven't yet covered is how these are actually how the slices are actually implemented. Any questions before we get back into that, either from you or from chat? I know there's one pending chat question.
You said there's one pending chat question.
The one about like, do all the events have to be read to build the latest state? I think that's what we are going to answer. Yeah.
Go for it.
No, I think that's going to be like, as we talk about implementation, that's going to get answered. But you were saying something?
Okay. No. Well, actually, I was asking. You have Drizzle in this project, so that was one other part of the database implementation that is important to point out because there was some sort of SQLite thing that you were importing, and this is also then Drizzle is kind of the ORM that goes along with that.
Yeah. So again, that's another thing that I'm using at the app level. Spectre itself doesn't come with opinions of like what database layer, what ORM you should be using. Honestly, like each slice could be storing its state in a JSON file for all Spectre cares about.
This is why you have this kind of init command that builds you a project with Spectre instead of having someone kind of have to go through the process of building up a project around using the library. There's that go along at the app level. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so the project that inspired Spectre, it's called Auto, on.auto. If you go to that website, it's like the same project, but like holy shit, my earphones died again. So Auto is like a much more comprehensive framework. Like it actually prescribes like its own infrastructure and data layer for how the events are stored, how the slices are stored, and each slice automatically turns into like a GraphQL endpoint. So like my previous company was like super heavy into GraphQL. Now they're pivoting kind of into like more of a product focus rather than developer focused. No, Zolvio.
Oh, Zolvio, right? Yeah.
So Zolvio is where I was working, and the CEO of Zolvio is building Auto. So the point of Auto is like the same thing, model-driven building. So you write the specifications first, and then the AI goes and implements it, so that there's like a deterministic step that verifies like the specified behavior exists.
Cool.
Auto is like a much more comprehensive framework underneath it. But so what I'm trying to do is kind of like strip away as much of it as possible, so that like you can bring your own opinions.
Really pare it down and make it just kind of
exactly
smaller conventions that you can then build around.
So yes, that's why SQLite, Drizzle, like in my original version of Spectre that I built maybe like a few weeks ago, solid, drizzle, all of these things were included in the in Spectre itself. But
Right,
eventually, like I found ways to shed them, and there's probably going to be more things. I think that boundary is going to move a lot. I think I'm experimenting right now with ways to like make authentication a part of the framework as well, in a way that you can bring your own actual auth like infrastructure, and you have like some context.
right.
But yeah, so let's talk about how the slices are implemented. So you can think of like any the actual runtime app is like, if you go here, we like the UI called Spectre dot like todos query. So this will send an API request to the backend. The backend will like parse the request and the object, and then it will look for the todos query slice, and it's going to like run that slice to figure out what data needs to be returned. Right.
So you mentioned at one point potentially using tan stack. Is that where this would come into play with these like to-dos query part?
Tan stack. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that would come in play here, unless like, so the way that tan stack start would come in play.
You were mentioning tan stack, yeah. How would that come into play in terms of the?
No, I was mentioning tan stack just like to replace the Hano and Solid setup that I have, to replace that with like tan stack start, because right now I have like a Hano API served at a different port, and then the Solid like SPA served at a different port.
Okay, I see. So you have kind of a full stack thing happening here with a server and a client instead of like a full stack framework running. Yeah.
Yes. That's so right. Here on this.
Yeah, I forgot you had mentioned Hana was part of this. We hadn't looked at that part of the project, or maybe we did.
Yeah. No, we did not. So yeah, the server TS. This is like the Hano app.
Right.
This is like,
that's so funny. Actually, this is, I went through a similar kind of journey at one point where when I was building Auto Show, where it was like, it never was Hano, but it was Fastify at one point. So it was like a similar setup to this. It was Fastify and Astro instead of Solid, and then I eventually got to Solid Start, because just having that kind of full stack framework made sense for me. But
exactly,
so this is the part, the Hano part is that what would be tan stack would replace.
Exactly, so instead of like calling that API, it would call like maybe a tan stack server function or tan stack start thing. And thing like, this is where we create our Spectre app with all the slices that we have. And then
it was like that. Like, this is an entry point.
Yeah, so this is also some convoluted logic that I need to clean up. But this is basically how you integrate whatever your server-side infrastructure is with the Spectre app that you have created. So this is also a part of the app, not Spectre, because you can have whatever server framework that you are using and whatever database you're using. But so basically, this is responsible for like converting your API endpoints into Spectre commands or query calls. And then Spectre takes care of like, okay, which slice handles this query or command, and then actually execute that slice, return the data, or create the event, store that in your database, and then run whatever reactions are needed. So that is the less interesting part. The more interesting part is how the query is actually implemented. So I mentioned that each slice has these two methods, the apply and the handle. This is the query slice, our change to do completion slice, which is command. It also has this apply and handle, and our reactions here. If we collapse the scenarios, we have the same apply and handle here. So apply, handle are like the two methods, or like two implementation methods for each slice. And the way it works is, let's go to todos query. The apply, actually, let's just start with add to do again, because this doesn't have an apply. A dot apply is basically how a slice's state gets updated with events. So each slice has its own state. We talked about how slices don't depend on each other. They don't import code from each other. But the other important aspect is that at runtime, each slice has its own data, and they don't look at the data of another slice. They only look at the event log, and that's it. So for each slice, you can have the exact data structure that that slice needs. And you don't need to like store a bunch of data for each of the slice. You just need the minimum amount of data that any slice needs to make its decision or to respond to its queries. And we can see here that the add to do, it doesn't even have any state, because we don't need any state for adding a to do. We just add them into our event log. Now, if we wanted to keep track, for example, a user can only add 100 to dos before they have to pay. Now we need to keep track of state for this slice. But in this version, there is no apply. There's just a handle. And the handle is what gets actually called at runtime. So this is your like API handler. So you receive a command, you trim it. If it doesn't exist, you throw an error. If it's more than the maximum length, you throw the error. So just validation here. And at the end, you just create an event. So the dot handle functions are basically pure functions. You give them input and you return whatever event they need to create. Questions so far?
I mean, I think I get the kind of idea. It makes sense, and it's like it's really an architectural kind of way of structuring your apps. That's gives you very specific kind of constraints. So yeah, no, it's cool. I guess my question would be like, is there things you still are going to build in? Like you mentioned Auth. So it's like, what is the stuff that you're going to add to this? Or like, at what point do you consider this like quote unquote complete? Or is there like other parts of the vision in terms of what you're trying to do with this framework, you know?
Yeah, there are a few things. I think Auth is probably the big one. And the way I'm imagining it is just that you get like some context here in your command handler, and you can like if context.user ID, like you can use that to make whatever decision you want. So user ID, role, organization, whatever you want can be stored in this context. And then in like your server.ts, you would actually define, like maybe you would have the logic for decoding a JSON web token and providing this context. And then in scenarios, you can say that, I don't know, maybe I would add like a separate context, like in the scenarios of like user ID, I don't know, 10. So Auth is like definitely important on the roadmap. We want to be able to specify in these slices or like in these scenarios how the slices should behave for specific users, for specific sessions. So like if I have 100 to-do added events with the user ID of 10, and then I add another to-do with the user ID of 10, it should throw an error instead of just adding it, right? So that kind of thing is, and I think then the next most important thing would be reactions with basically external reactions, or talking to the outside world, talking to third-party APIs. That's another important part, because we want to be able to specify how our apps communicate with the outside world. So like, for example, an LLM, and then kind of like make that part of the entire experience. Because I definitely want to be building kind of like agentic apps with this. And one kind of like more long shot idea that I had was turning specs into evals automatically. I haven't like done too much exploration in that, but like if you think of it, like evals are essentially a bunch of examples that show how the LLM should behave, and then you try to tweak your prompts to get the like expected results. So they follow a very similar shape, where given some context, when the user sends you this prompt, you should have this sort of a response. The difference is that you're not going to be matching exact one-to-one. Like here, we're literally checking if the title is this string, but with an LLM, it's more fuzzy.
Yeah, you'd be looking to test that. It just gives you some sort of response, and then you need a way to kind of grade it in terms of how good or bad, how well it follows what you asked it to do. So you could look at basic things like if you asked it to give a response that was just within a certain character limit, you could check to see if it gave you that response within that character limit. If you want to, do different types of summaries and test whether it gives you a short, medium, or long summary, So that's one thing that you could test, just a basic. But then you want really a higher level, you can have an LLM then grade the actual text outputs, because there's usually more fuzzy things that you're looking for in terms of like what actually makes a good summary and things, what makes good tone, good voice, good grammar, things like that.
Yeah, so those are a few things that could be done on like a framework level. Then there's like the workflow. So the way Spectre is right now is it's just a framework with a skill.md. You go to your agent, you tell it to build something, and it does it. But one of the superpowers of Spectre that is not being leveraged right now is that each slice can be built and tested and optimized and refactored like completely independently. So once I have the events created, and once I have like the workflow that I imagine is that you go to your agent, you describe an idea, and what the agent simply does is write all the events and just writes this much of your slices. So the name, the description, and the schema. That's it. So it sets up the skeleton of your entire app first. And then once the skeleton is set up, each slice can be worked on in parallel, which means you can, if you have 20 slices, you can potentially launch 20 parallel sub-agents to write scenarios, build the implementation, run, verify, refactor, simplify, optimize, whatever. Like do all the work for each slice completely in parallel with all the other slices, instead of having one agent go like one by one, like let me implement this, and then this. Which means like the bigger, it doesn't matter how big your app gets, you can always do so much work in parallel, which is so much more efficient than having one agent go through every single thing, which is even more helpful for like super large code bases.
Yeah, and I'm looking at, you have the two packages, the create Spectre, which has like 3 effect dependencies, effect CLI, and effect platform node. And then the actual core doesn't look like it has really any dependencies except standard schema spec. And I think I know what that is. That's like the thing that Zod, Valabot, and effect can all kind of share, right?
Yeah, and also it's like literally just it's just an import type. It's not like we're not even importing any code.
Dependency. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was wondering if this could just be like it's just import type. I was wondering if this could just be like a dev dependency, but for some reason Codex said that it cannot be a dev dependency. I don't know why. I'm gonna
it's doing something at runtime, probably for validation. That's kind of like that's what I've been led to believe is the point of these things, right?
Yeah, I mean it would be the validation library doing things at runtime, not standard schema. Standard schema is like literally just a spec and some type definitions. So it really shouldn't need to exist at like as a dependency, but I think it exists so that any application that's using Spectre, it might have to import standard schema as a dependency for TypeScript to work. So it instead of like you having to import standard schema, Spectre imports it. Import standard schema so you don't have to. It's a weird TypeScript thing. I'm sure there's a way around it. I'm just not smart enough to find it right now.
That's all good.
Yeah. So we were talking about like kind of the roadmap. So yeah, that kind of like building that sort of a workflow where you can have an agent like first set up your app, like the skeleton, and then have like parallel sub-agents actually like implement them. Maybe even like test with different variations. So once you have a single slice specified, you can have like 4 different models, build 4 different implementations of them. You can test all of them, see how they work, and
Right. Do
and then
like
compare
A/B
them, and
testing
maybe
really easily.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Another kind of workflow thing that I thought of was that if you have the like specifications and everything defined, you can just have like cheaper models, like a Claude Haiku or GPT Mini, Gemini Flash. You can try implementing them these slices with those models, and if that doesn't work, if for some reason, like maybe you had Gemini Flash, like give it 2 tries, like it tried to implement it, tested it, didn't work, made some changes, didn't work. Now you bring in like a smarter model like an Opus or a 5.5. Like, okay, I tried a smaller model, it didn't work, now you go ahead and implement it. But most of the time what's going to happen is that because each slice has such like a small responsibility and everything is like very well tested, most of the time smaller models can do a pretty good job at implementing these. So once you have things set up, not only can you run things in parallel, you can also use like, you don't have to use the frontier smartest model for all the implementation. You only have to bring them in when the smaller models are actually struggling to do something, because like this specific slice happens to have more complicated logic.
Yeah.
Uh,
Makes sense.
yeah, and because each slice logic like lives kind of in, it's almost like each slice is sandboxed.
Yeah.
Where like you can even
away from all the other code.
Yeah, exactly. So even if like a slice is complete slop, that's fine because that slop is contained within a slice. Yeah. And at any point you can throw that implementation away and come up with a completely new implementation, and that's fine because the contracts are the same. Like the behavior is the same, the contracts are the same. It's just the actual implementation that's different, and that's fine. You can have a slop implementation if you don't care about them. If you have like certain slices that are like the hot path that you actually need to fully optimize for, you pay attention to those slices and not the other ones. So there's a lot of like slice specific thing that we can do here. One thing from like a demo or an application level is that, so right now each slice stores its state in a SQLite table. So we have the store here that like kind of is it's almost like a dependency declaration that, hey, this slice is going to store its data in SQLite. And then in our .apply here, we basically listen for events, and for each event we do something to our database. So when there's a to-do added event, we are going to add a row into our specific table. But maybe you have a slice that requires like vector search, or maybe you have a slice that doesn't need like the whole power of SQL, it just needs some JSON data structure. That's fine. You can have each slice use a different database if you want. You can have a slice that only stores JSON files. You can have one slice that uses Postgres. You can have another slice that uses ChromaDB. You can have something that uses a graph database. And it doesn't matter because the actual source of truth are the events. And as long as your event log is like consistent and that the behavior there is fine, you can have each slice can choose its own data structures, its own database infrastructure, and all it has to do is to apply these. And another thing you can do is like this data doesn't really matter. You can completely throw away all the data of a slice, and when you run it again, it's going to start reading from the beginning of the event log and come back to its current state. So because the actual source of truth is the event log, the state of the slice is just like a snapshot of the event log. You can throw it away. You can rebuild it from scratch. You don't even need to do data migrations. Like for example, if in the remove to do here, we are tracking each to do and whether it was removed or not, because we need to decide if, or basically like, yeah, if we come down here, we are checking if a to-do has already been removed. And if it has been removed, we throw an error. If it hasn't been removed, we create the to-do removed event, right? Maybe if we want to change this, let's say that I just want to completely get rid of this field, and I'll come down here, and instead of setting remove to true, I'm just going to say database dot is it dot delete? Yeah, delete where this is the to-do ID, and I'm just going to do this. Like, okay, now I have made a change to my database schema for the slice. I've made a change to my implementation, both the apply and the handle. Now I can just like rerun this. I can just get rid of like the old table. The new table gets populated with data, and that's it. I don't need to write any migrations. I don't need to worry about what happens to the existing data because that wasn't the source of the truth. The events are.
So you have 2 errors in add to do. So is that not related?
This is because I was trying to do this auth thing. Yeah. Again, slices don't depend on each other, so there is literally no way that you can break some other slice.
I like to see errors, so I want to see if that was related or not.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there's literally no way to break another slice by making a change to one slice, because it's not just the implementation, but also they have their own state.
Yeah. That makes sense. The fact that this one wasn't broken and the other one was proves that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Word.
Now I don't need to
I need to start wrapping it up in the next like 5 or so minutes. So
sure. Yeah. No, that was everything that I had to show or talk about.
Yeah, this is great, man. It's very cool. It's not what I was expecting. But I can see why you would build something like this because you get to kind of put some of your architectural tastes into practice in a way that kind of codifies it with just like some nice conventions, which that's what frameworks are for. So it's cool. And it's not like a framework in like a JavaScript framework kind of way. It's like a kind of higher level idea almost. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I see. Honestly, the biggest reason I built this is because I wanted to do a bunch of like consulting and freelancing, and I have my own like ideas on how to kind of accelerate this kind of work. And now with this, I can just like have agents build a bunch of things, and I can even have like my non-technical stakeholders like look at these scenarios and like tell me how what I'm doing. Like eventually, maybe if I build a visualization. Okay, another roadmap thing is that I want to be able to visualize all the slices and events on like a canvas.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you could have it. You just kind of point your agent at it and say, turn this into like turn each slice into like an HTML file that gives these pieces and like examples of the events and things like that. And descriptions.
Sorry, my earphone died again.
Yeah, get your crap figured out, dude.
I'm just gonna use my laptop next time. That was a dumb decision to not do that. Sorry, yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying so you could create you could point an agent at these and create kind of reusable docs because it has these conventions. So you say I create a doc page for each slice that has these things and give you like an example, like the inputs and the outputs. It'd be like just like an API documentation kind of thing.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be an agent. I can just write a script, or I can have an agent write a script that takes all these slices and gives me like a markdown version of these docs or these slices.
Yeah, I'm saying if a person wanted to read docs is what I'm saying. Not
exactly.
If someone just wanted to understand their slices better.
Yeah. No, I think in a version that I was building a couple months ago, I think one of the things I was I think I should probably build this into Spectre, which is like run a CLI command, and all the slices get translated into Markdown so that you can read them.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it shouldn't even need an agent. Yeah, it shouldn't even need an agent to do that because like each slice has a name, a description, a schema.
Yeah, you could just have a script do it. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, then that's probably less error prone. Cool, man. Well, I'll be curious to see where you go with this. We won't stream next week because I'm going to be busy the weekend. I won't necessarily be busy Monday, but I'll be like recovering from a whole weekend trip. But 2 weeks from now, we could probably get back to it. And
makes sense.
auto show stuff. Let's see. So that would be the 15th.
Yeah, excited to see where auto show is, and maybe we can rebuild auto show in Spectre.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested to try out some of like converting some of the CLI features. Because I'm thinking the way I now have the CLI going, each command can be thought of kind of like a slice. Because you'd have the extract slice, and you have the image slice, the text to speech slice, and the video slice. And then each of those are all kind of self-contained and don't have a whole lot of shared logic between them. Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, we'll call it here. Thank you to the people who are watching, especially the person who's commenting, and whoever said hi at the beginning. Yeah, we got one person on Twitch, one person on YouTube. Sweet. Nice. Still worth deploying to multiple platforms.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. AJC and the web devs at night. Any parting words, Dev?
Yeah, I mean, don't try npm create Spectre right now. I'll let everyone know on Twitter once it's actually ready for prime time.
Cool. Awesome, man. Yeah, well, let me know when you feel like it's in a good place, and I'll tweets about it and tell tell people that all the cool kids are using it. So if you're not, then you're not cool. So you're gonna use it, right? That's how you get people to use a tool.
Yeah.
Social pressure.
Honestly, just say that this fixed agentic coding, and everyone's gonna jump on it.
Yeah, that's all you need. All right, we'll catch you guys next time. See you later.